Hi, everybody. Happy Black History Month. One of 12, 365. I'm thrilled to be here with you all. My name is Michaela Sinclair Brandon. My pronouns are she, her. I'm zooming in from Muncie Lenape land in New Jersey. I am a biracial woman with light tan skin, long brown braids. I'm wearing a white shirt. I'm sitting in front of a maroon couch and a kind of grayish wall with some brown artwork in the back. And I am currently a freelance artist of sorts, just figuring it out. Yeah, whoever wants to introduce themselves, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Minga Prather. I am calling in from Lenape, Hoking Land, otherwise known as Manhattan. I am a dark skinned Black woman with long, dark locks. I am sitting in front of a white wall with a black pillow behind me. I am currently a freelance dance artist. I'm also an arts administrator. I believe in sustainability of the arts, and I will fight for that. um, and I'm very happy to be with you all today. My pronouns are she, her. I just realized that I forgot to say that.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Christina Smith. Um, Nobody really calls me that, though. Everybody calls me CoCo. Um, let's see. I am zooming in live and direct from. Where am I zooming in from? Oh, wait, hold on. I wrote this down a long time ago. Hold on. From Muncie Lenape, which is also Rockaway. I live in Southside Jamaica, Queens. Um, what else? I am a Black female with length locks. I have half of my head shaved. I usually have it in my grills, but not today because I'm getting them cleaned. And I am sitting in a brown lazy boy, and I have on a black sweatshirt. My occupation is a dance educator and a choreographer, as well as a competitive street dancer. I compete in various street styles, and I have my own dance company where we explore Black excellence and the social dynamics of Black dance, vernacular, and white spaces. And that's what I do.
Go ahead, Kat. I'm gonna let Kat go.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't positive if we were all introducing ourselves. My name is Catherine Kirk. You can call me Kat. Um, she, her are my pronouns, and I am currently calling in from Canarsie and Lenape Hoking Land in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a brown skinned woman with a shaved head wearing blue light frames and a faux cozy leather shirt situation, making a very late meal in my kitchen. I am a dancer, dance artist, performer, but I also freelance and have been doing some arts and advocacy work with creating new futures in New Yorkers for culture and arts, um, amongst some other things. I think that's it. Rambling, a little brain dead, but I'm happy to be here.
Hey, everybody. My name is Antuan Byers. My pronouns are he, him. And I am a dancer, creative entrepreneur, and dance arts activist based here on the stolen Lenape Hoking Land, which most of us know as Manhattan, New York. And yeah, I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation. I think that's it. Pronouns are he and him, if I didn't share that already.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Brentley, pronouns he, him, zooming in from Ramaytush Ohlone land, currently known as San Francisco. I identify as a dance artist, as well as a dance administrator, as well as production and tech support for dance, burlesque, circus productions as well. I am a, wow, chai complexion black man, wearing a red t-shirt underneath a black hoodie and a brown corduroy jacket with a 70s style inspired Applejack hat. Behind me is a dress form with a button-up shirt surrounded by hanging belts on both sides, surrounded by two very backlit, bright, overcast windows, one of which has the head of my guitar in it. Yeah.
I'm gonna hop in again. This is Antuan speaking. I completely forgot to do my visual description, so I'll throw it in here now. I'm a Black man who's proud of that, who has brown skin, shaved head that I did myself, quarantine cuts. Yes, I am still using that joke. Facial hair that is shortly shaved. I'm in my bedroom, which has gray walls. To my right is a mirror with some abstract art. If you've been following for a while, my hanging plant is also up there. She's getting some length, some inches, Hanny, okay? To my left, I have my beanbag chair with a gray blanket on it. It's blue, the beanbag chair. And my puppy Banks is taking a nap on the chair, if you can see her. And I'm wearing a black hoodie with the red flower on it. And that's my visual description.
Hey everybody, my name is Nathaniel Hunt. People call me Nathaniel or Nate. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm currently zooming in live from the Tonga land, which is Los Angeles, California. I am a biracial man, light-skinned, queer dance artist, dance performer, educator, choreographer, and entrepreneur. I am wearing a red t-shirt with Bose headphones. I'm in my office, so there's a lot of visual descriptions here. I'm in a brown lazy boy chair. To my right is a lazy boy chair with like 2 iMacs. A green desk to my left is a music stand, another desk with a bunch of books. To my closest left is another desk. I think that's everything. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Cemiyon Barber. I'm a professional dancer based in New York City. Visual, there is some dance tools behind me. And things on the wall. I have on a blue do-rag and a blue hat and pink glasses. And I do ballet and jazz and modern and all that stuff. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Sammy. My name is Joy Marie Thompson. Pronouns she, her. I am a Black woman, currently wearing glasses, a black wrap, a brass nose ring, a silver necklace, and a black shirt. I'm in my room where I'm living with my family outside of Pittsburgh, PA, otherwise known as Osage Land. And my occupation is a question that I literally have I question about every other day. So I'm just gonna skip that one. I dance, I sometimes choreograph. I'm trying to figure it out one day at a time, but that's all I got right now. Thank you all for answering so far. I think I'll take away for the second question for everyone, which is, why did you join DANC? I'll begin. I joined DANC because I was ranting about the lack of credit that I think a lot of freelance dancers don't receive, and I didn't really like it, and so I started ranting about it. In terms of like some choreographers, I won't name them, have Instagrams where they might or they might not credit the dancers that are in the performance. And so someone that was a part of DANC saw my rant and was like, hey, I think you should like put that energy into this organization. And then she gave me the link to the meeting, and I've been joining ever since. That was like April, been joining ever since. And now I'm a part of, yeah. And that's another, we'll get to that. Someone else can take it away.
I too was invited to Dank twice actually. Once was by Megan Williams. We were talking, I was sick on the phone, and she was describing to me this ballet company that does all this work outside. I forgot their name, is slipping me out. Write it in the chat when I find it. But they make space for queer people to do ballet. And that space is not always there, and I always question that a little bit. Also, you know, questioning where I fit into the whole stream of things, because I typically like more classical based kinds of works, and those are completely white spaces most of the time. And so how to navigate that and sound like I know what I'm talking about, and Dank is very helpful with the language, for sure.
I can hop in next. This is Antuan speaking. So I originally joined Dank. It is 2021 now. So that would mean it was 2020. You know, it's hard to know like time right now with COVID and everything. But I guess that was 2020, last year, almost a year ago, when I think most of us on March 12th had found out that, you know, we were gonna, you know, be out of work for a while. And, you know, anyone that knows me knows kind of that I always speak up about the dance and stuff. You know, it gets me in trouble sometimes, but that's okay. Because now it's popular, it's cool. Now it's cool to speak up. So, but yeah, you know, I've had varied experiences being a part of AGMA, American Guild of Musical Artists, which is a large union that represents a lot of dancers in New York, around the country, or not a lot of dancers, actually, that's not true. It represents some dancers around the country. But I'd also had experiences where I wasn't union. So sometimes those experiences overlapped. My first dance job was a union job, and then my second dance job wasn't. So experiencing what it's like to have breaks, to not have breaks, to have shorter breaks, what it's like to be paid a livable wage versus less than minimum wage. And just realizing like the differences between workplace to workplace, and realizing that I was very privileged in some places, but realizing that within the next day, I could be in a completely different situation. And recognizing that like that experience wasn't unique to me, that there's several dancers who were from job to job having these experiences. And, you know, when we're union, we can kind of expect certain things from the jobs that we take, right? So I've danced in 2 union houses up to this point. And, you know, you're always going to get your break. You can always assume you're going to be paid a livable wage, right? You know, like I don't ever take a union job and question whether I'm going to be paid or on time, or right. There's certain things you can kind of expect. And then there's also certain things you expect from jobs that aren't union, right? There's assumption that you may be paid late or not at all. And if you do, it might be less than a livable minimum wage. So really just taking into account all of my different varied experiences. I mean, not that many, I'm still very young, but the experiences that I have had. And one thing I realized is that a big thing was education, is that some people didn't even know, right? So we've probably experienced this, but you go in a space with people who don't get breaks, and you start talking about breaks, and then they think you're crazy, right? Or you go into a place where people don't get paid to dance, and you start saying, oh, I actually should be paid on time. And people are like, what? You're not an artist. You want to be paid on time? Or like, what's your worth, right? So being a part of those conversations and realizing that education was the first step, and like letting everyone in our community know that, hey, there's some people that get breaks every hour. So it's okay. You can be like a serious professional dancer and take breaks. I know it's like crazy, right? Or you can be paid a livable wage, like you can just dance. That's also a possibility some places. So how can we get closer to that, not just for the people that are able to join AGMA or the people that are able to join the big companies that can support that, usually predominantly white companies, the bigger white ballet companies, or if they're not union, even the non-union companies, the ones that can like sustain and support the dancers are usually white. So yeah, just wondering how we can like find a middle ground with education for our community, but also access to equity and safe spaces to work. So yeah, that's why I joined Dank.
And I joined because I saw that you were a part of Dank and we went to the same school. Antuan and I went to Ailey together a few years apart, and Minga. So I think I saw you like shared on your story something about Dank. And I like read the little description and I was like, well, this sounds great. Sign me up. So then I came and I was like, wow, there's a bunch of freelance artists talking about advocating for freelance artist rights. And I was like, okay, great, let's do this. Yeah, that's pretty much why I joined. So thanks, Antuan.
Well, we'll also kind of bounce off that, Michaela. I also joined Dank because I had very similar experiences to Antuan, except I kind of did mine the opposite way. Um, I was working a lot of like non-union jobs, and October of 2019 was the first time that I worked a union job at the Metropolitan Opera. And I think I was astonished one, and just kind of like the pay gap between what you make in a non-union dance company, working like crazy hours. It's like you're traveling a lot, you're doing a lot, you're on call 24/7. And then kind of coming to the Met, it's like, wow, like we have breaks, like we get paid for like almost everything. Like, wow, this is amazing. And just kind of recognizing that, like maybe there can be a shift that happens so that gap isn't so wide. So I think that was like a huge part of me joining Dank. I also had a conversation with Megan Wright, kind of about like workplace conditions and how dancers are treated in workspaces. And I think that was also a big factor of why I joined, just because some of my experiences, I would like for them to not happen to other people. But in order for that to happen, there's a little bit of work that needs to be done, and somebody has to do it.
Thank you, Minga. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I felt inclined to speak after you because of the last statement you had said, like someone has to do it. And so that was kind of my reason for joining Dank. I got the invite as well. I'm not sure who I got it from. Part of me feels like it was from Joy Marie because we were part of a separate group during the summer. So I'm fairly recent to Dank, and I drop in and out just because sometimes I just don't have the emotional bandwidth. I think as Antuan stated after March 12th, it was a big kind of traumatic experience for a lot of individuals, specifically a lot of artists, even more specifically, a lot of dancers. So my commitment level has been like a roller coaster, but I am happy to be here and be welcomed here. Similar to those who have stated before, I've had kind of like a very wide range of dance jobs. My first dance job was like really awesome, but it was like non-union, and so I would like be having like a crazy time, like dancing all over the world, but then like having almost like 12-hour days, and then going to sleep, and then driving, performing, driving for 3 hours, going to bed for 5 hours, waking up, doing 2 mini performances, having a 2-hour break, then performing 2 times. Like it was like, what? So that was like my first dance job. And that was Ailey too. Yeah, that was Ailey too. It was a dance job that really set me up for my dance career. I'm so fortunate, I'm so blessed, but it was a lot. And at the time it was a kind of an internship. So it was very separate. So they were allowed to do all of these things. Granted, it was incredible, but it was then down the line, my second job after that was Ballet Hispanico. And that was my first time into AGMA, into the union. So it's very different, like you get breaks on the hour, you get all of these different things. And then I went back and forth between non-union, union gigs, and ended up at the Met. And similar to Minga, you're like, how are you getting paid almost $60 an hour? Like it was just out of this world. From my first dance job that I literally could probably count pennies of how much I made, versus dancing at the Met, and you're getting paid to sit, or you're getting paid more to carry something, which again, not upset, but that gap was so vast. And then you look even smaller into the window of who is in the room, who is getting these jobs. They're primarily white people. And so, for me, I felt really inclined to join Dank because of the experiences that I have had, to try to bridge the gap between these kind of super magnificent, and magnificent by size, maybe not so much as value, union spaces, and then these also very intricate or small non-union spaces, and how to bridge that gap, and how to be able to how to use experiences from one to benefit the other, and vice versa, because it's important, and I think it's like Minga had shared, someone has to do the work, and when I feel inclined and when I have the emotional space to do so, I want to step up and I want to be present.
I too joined DANC because of Antuan. And I stayed because of Antuan. I don't know. I just got to know Antuan like last spring a little bit more. We went to the same high school, but not together, or maybe 1 year together. I'm old. 1 year. And I'd gone back there and whatnot and just seen Antuan around, but just getting to know Antuan, I was just like, I became a little obsessed. I just wanted to be whatever he was doing, I wanted to do. So I stayed, I would say, more so for like the moments when, I don't know, just like I would honestly stay for the chat. Like the chat was pretty lit, especially OG, because there was a lot of like steering committee like chat then, like literal audio chat. So I feel like everything went down in the side chat, and that's where I got connected to DANC and the conversations that were happening. And I also appreciated that it was a space where I feel like people could disagree in a way that wasn't like crazy, or just like educate each other, challenge each other, I should say. Like there would be moments, I feel like, when Antuan would gently come into the chat and remind us or folks that maybe we were advocating too much for our oppressors or employers, or not employers, just bosses who didn't have us under contract or whatever. Like we just fallen in, some folks, myself included, could fall into habits where we're like, oh, but, or I guess not really me, let me not put myself in that, but I just think it's beautiful that we could challenge each other to be like, hold on, like the whole dance world isn't going to fall apart if we get what we deserve. And I think a lot of times there's this like fear, like, oh, there's not enough money, like they won't be able to make dances, I won't be able to get hired, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, it's just like, just make a dance with less people that you can actually afford to care for. Maybe your vision doesn't need 10 people. Maybe it doesn't even need 2. I don't know. I stuck around even in moments when whiteness showed its face and annoyed the hell out of me. So I'm definitely grateful for this space. It makes me very happy. And I'm also grateful to DANC because of that OG wages group that me and Tamisha were in, and Antuan would bop into, and maybe some other folks. It feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, so I'm super new here. But before I say that, I just want to backtrack. I forgot to talk about my little human. She's super hyper. She's gonna be running in and out of this frame like this whole meeting. Yeah, so she's 2.5. Her name is Anjuli. And so how I found out about DANC through social media. Actually, I was going off about a post about Crump and like dancers not getting paid, and somebody was like, "Stop! Can you please leave that alone? Thank you." And somebody was like, "Oh, there's a site, and like they it was like, you should follow this IG account. It's a bunch of dancers." And I was like, okay, I'm gonna check it out, and I did. And this was very recent, like for real, like maybe within like the last 6 weeks or so. And I checked it out, and I was just like eager to connect with like some Black folks. And like I said, I do a lot of street styles, and just I think it was Nathaniel was saying something along the lines of getting paid $60 an hour. And I'm like, well, I can't wait to tell the homies that someone is getting paid $60 an hour for rehearsal, because they're not gonna believe me. Like, this is like hella inspirational. They're not gonna believe me, you know? Like, they're not. Like, they're not. We dance like for the love of it, for the culture, for the community, you know? That's like the joke all the time. Oh, we're doing it for the love of the culture, you know? You're never gonna get paid. You know, rehearsal is like coming out of your pocket. You know, like it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of things that go on. And I feel that in terms of events being thrown and, you know, people not having the knowledge of what could happen if we take the right steps. And, you know, yeah, I just think that we need to educate ourselves more, and I'm open to learn more and really, you know, yeah, just really learn and share with my community, so that way when we have events and we have, you know, we want to put on productions, we can also get paid for our services and our crafts and things like that. So that's pretty much why I'm here.
Hey all, this is Nick speaking. I joined DANC around March, April of 2020. My partner at the time, who's also a part of DANC, she's since moved out of San Francisco. She now lives in New York City, but she actually joined DANC first, and I was often in the room when she'd be on these weekly meetings, so I would overhear a lot of the conversations that were taking place. And it was several weeks before I sat down and actually watched and could see what was happening, what these people were doing. And it was also tax season, so we were both getting our taxes ready, and both of us were dancers. And she comes from the ballet world, and I'm the mix of everything else. And it was such a clear disparity how easy it was for her to track down contracts and formal agreements for companies and work that she had been a part of, and how, in contrast, I had to reach back to choreographers that I'd worked with and question, like, so how much did I make? And just the lack of informalities with so much of the dance world highlighted how much we have grown to just accept as being off or incomplete, or yeah, just not up to par. I feel like this industry as a whole has fallen behind across a lot of other industries that have very codified processes for everything that they do. And I think it's reached a point in the dance world where there's so much that we have accepted as being hard and tough and difficult and kind of whatever. And so once the pandemic hit and the dance world had to just stop, venues are closed, studios are closed, no more classes, performances, rehearsals. It just seemed like the right and the ripe time to say, hold up, what are we doing? And to reassess, what can we do differently so that it doesn't continue to be this way? Because this doesn't work. Having now lived in New York City and San Francisco, arguably the two most expensive cities in this country, that are both abundant with performance opportunities, but each of which has its own host of challenges towards making the dance lifestyle viable. Finding a way to make that work, because there's so many dancers who have given up and dropped off and just thrown in the towel because it's too hard. And it's so sad how it's become that way in this country, and how it isn't that way in other countries, and questioning why that is, and also what can be done to make that different. So all of that is why I joined DANC.
Nick, I wanted to piggyback off of that, because when the pandemic hit, I definitely hit a wall, because it was in a time when I had spent my whole life navigating, or I spent my whole life trying to strategize a dance career, that I sacrificed everything else. And it's interesting that that's encouraged, to sacrifice everything for a field that doesn't really give you anything in return. And when I mean something in return, I mean even proof that you were in the piece. it's very interesting how many choreographers don't even let you have media of the work that you were in. So when it ended, I thought, okay, I guess that's it. And I didn't have anything. I thought at the time that I didn't have anything to fall back on. And for a while I didn't. And I think Dank, I don't think I know, Dank really helped me kind of anchor myself and to find or meeting new people that were experiencing the same things that I was going through. Because before that, it was just like this like vortex of like, I'm the only one going through this right now. I'm the only one, I'm the only blah, 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 all this stuff. And so I think that's why I stayed in Dank. Definitely stayed in Dank from learning all the things from what you all had to say in those meetings.
Yes, I can say it was very similar to what Joy was going through. It wasn't a random conversation why Megan invited me to Dank. I was actually scammed out of $3,000. And it was from this email. It's like, we need dancers for Calvin Klein. It looked all official. The background was like, it looked so real. And like, I was just used to getting a contract and like, you know, signing it and just like doing the thing. And like, I was so excited to have a dance job. And then I got scammed hardcore out of a lot of money that I had no way of getting back. And it just made me realize too, so many people reached out to me and saying that they went through something similar and like how vulnerable dancers and artists are when it comes to stuff like this, because we're just so used to people writing a little sentence and saying, here's your contract, or like no contract at all, verbal agreement or something like that. And it's just really a problem.
Just to piggyback off of that real quick, because that's unfortunate. I actually heard of a similar scam going on with the Calvin Klein ad actually, and like I was discussing it with one of my friends. I was saying like, it's only in dance I feel that this happens. Like if you have a production, right, and you go to the people, to the set design, oh, I don't have any money to pay you, you're not gonna have a set. If you tell the people in the sound, whatever, the light crew, you don't have no money to pay them, you're not gonna have any lights. It's like dance is like, yo, like it's like the afterthought. And I think because it's the afterthought, it's like the thing that you could supplement or not supplement. I could pay you or not pay you because you get an exposure, right? Or, you know, like it's just like all these crazy things that like, and it's like if I say no, like, no, I'm not gonna accept that. This is garbage. Someone else will accept it, maybe even at a lower rate than I was offered, you know? So it's really like I don't even want to say like gatekeepers. Like who's a gatekeeper? Like what is that even gonna look like? I don't know. I was just thinking out loud.
I definitely believe that there's truth in that, you know, especially younger dancers who are really eager. You know, they're just stepping into the field. They're like trying to get their feet wet. They're trying to gain their footing. I think it is so easy for them to kind of end up in situations like that because like they just don't know. And I feel like, you know, up until now, kind of the things that have been happening have been very, you know, it's kind of been kept swept under the rug. Like people don't like talking about it. I think it used to gain you a bad rep for kind of like talking about it. And that's something that I really hope changes because I feel like if we don't talk about it, we don't communicate about it, we don't speak about our experiences, it's just empowering the people who keep doing it because that silence is compliance. You know, and it's like they know that they can get away with it because they've done it once, they've done it numerous times, and they're never going to be held accountable. So until we start holding those people accountable, unfortunately, I don't really believe that anything is going to change. So that's why I'm so thankful that I think people are finally catching on to that. It's like, oh, this happened to me. Oh, that happened to you. Oh, like, okay, well, let's talk about it. What are our next steps? What do we do?
This is Nick speaking again. It's really fascinating to see how this translates across different performing media. So if you take a dancer whose instrument is their body and then put it alongside, say, a musician or a circus performer or an aerialist, all of whom have tools or equipment or an apparatus, something they can hold that sometimes the existence of that thing enables other people who you're trying, your client, to understand, oh, like you play the violin, like you have to practice that. You have to put in time for that. That's worth something. Not to say that musicians don't get screwed over. They absolutely do. All performers are undervalued across the board, but dancers are done so in a very different way because there's nothing. It's you. Like you are the product. You're the instrument. And it's so interesting when you see them side by side how an aerialist who is suspended from the ceiling from a hoop or a trapeze or silk can fight and say like, hey, I'm going to do this act for 3 minutes up there, but unless I have a platform like this, a crash mat over here, unless the rigging point is up to these specifications, I'm not going on. And they can hold that against whoever they're working for. Whereas dancers, like you're just kind of given the floor, that the concrete or those little puzzle piece wedding floors that you slide together with like that's what, or a carpet at a conference hall or convention center. That the lack of something external blinds people to the value behind you, the person who is, like, you are the act, you are the product. And how a lot of, say, aerialists or circus performers start pretty late, and maybe they do it for a few years and they get to a point where they have an act and can be hired, but then they're dancers who've been dancing since they were single digits. Some of them have degrees. They put in the same money that you did for your poli-sci or your English or your geology degree at the same college that you went to, but they don't get treated the same way. So that disparity side by side, when you realize it, is pretty frustrating. And yeah, that that needs to change.
This is Antuan speaking. I've been thinking or sharing with folks and thinking about whatever. When we were younger and we would dream about a career in dance, and I always invite people to think about what they dreamed about and how close is what you're doing to what you dreamed about. And most of us are so far away from the dreams that we used to have, right? I'll tell you mine. I wake up, get my little coffee, walk to the stew for company class, honey, fabulous. And then we're done with company class and I go into rehearsal, and then I go home and I'm a dancer. That's what being a dancer meant for so long when I was growing up, right? And then you become a dancer and you realize that there's so much more that is required for you to do that, to do this thing. So yeah, and this leads me to, like, I'm always advocating for livable wage versus minimum wage, right? Because there's been studies done in every state that the minimum wage is not enough to live off of. If people work for 40 hours a week making minimum wage, there's not one state where you could, like, afford to pay all your bills, the average of, like, the cost of all your bills, right? And I think that's problematic. That doesn't make any sense. The fact that there can even be a world where you can work what we've agreed upon is too much. 40 hours a week is too much work a week, right? We all agree on that. But even working that is not enough for you to support yourself, to be able to, like, have a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food on the table, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that whole thing. So I think that, like, we know this, but always working from the group that is most in danger, most marginalized, most risk averse is really the way to go, right? So fighting for universal basic income, for instance, or a minimum livable wage is something that will benefit all of us, especially dancers, right? So that it's not just dependent on who you work for, how fierce that choreographer is, or how many grants they got that year. Your well-being is not dependent on that. And, a lot of the times in our field, we operate as if it's Amazon, right? And we think about, okay, I have this thing and I need to sell this many of these things, right? But that's not how our art works. It's not Amazon. We don't have a max amount of things that we have to sell out. And when we start marketing and trying to sell dance and trying to make dance into this thing that is similar to Amazon, it doesn't work, right? So with those two things being said, and if those two things are true, then that means that there has to be some support right? We know that most arts organizations, specifically dance, your ticket sales are not going to be what sustains the company. There has to be support from somewhere else. So told y'all Lenape Hoking, right? So keeping that in mind, it's like, so what do we do next, right? And you know, we at DANC try to center the dancers in the room because they often have the least voice in the room. So what can we do to support that person that's at the bottom of the pyramid, who is usually us as dancers? And I love what Kat brought up about how we advocate for our oppressors so much. I argue more with dancers than I have with choreographers about how much more money they should make an hour. And I think that's just the product of like this socialization and this culture, this toxic culture that we operate in, to where what Minga was saying, if you speak up, you're the bad guy, right? I mean, we've seen in the past 2 years, so many people have spoken up about sexual harassment, right? And I am around different people who may be around people in these circles, and it's really interesting because some people are still blaming the victim in these situations. Or I've been in situations where I've, you know, advocated for dancers to make a minimum wage in a city where we know that that minimum wage is too low. And like people get blacklisted for those types of conversations, which also I just found out it's illegal in New York to blacklist somebody. So get your lawyer on that one. But yeah, again, education, right? There's so much that we don't know. One thing I'm trying to do is like educate as many people about money as possible, because we don't talk about it. You can work with somebody for years and not know how much money they make, right? And I think that's problematic because, you know, women are statistically paid less than men. I mean, we did our real dancers wages survey within DANC, and you could literally see that there was a female dancer and a male dancer who danced for the same company and had a $100 or $200 pay gap. That existed, and we did this survey in 2020. So these things still exist. We kind of talk about them as if they're this thing that lives in the past, but this is like the world that we're currently operating. So Nick, I think you were right about like this moment being a time for us to reflect. We don't have as much going on. We get blinded by the rose-colored glasses. We get blinded by the art of it all sometimes. And like, you know, this is my like being blinded by the art dance. And we forget about the humanity, which that art is supposed to reflect a lot of the time. So I'm hoping that, you know, as an industry, since we have all this time to consider humanity with all the stuff that's going on around the world, to people that look like me, that look like us, in this moment where we're reconsidering humanity, I hope that makes its way into our dance studios as well.
Yeah, I also wonder, I just wonder so much about like the root of, I mean, there's so many roots. Roots are so expansive, but like sometimes, like what you're saying, how we're like arguing with dancers more, it can be so frustrating because we all have to advocate for ourselves, but it's also like, why would that even be separate sometimes? And even within the company, you know, I think we've all kind of expressed within DANC, like, what if folks don't want to organize in solidarity? But I still have so many questions as to why. Like, is it just, I wonder if for some folks it just feels like a lost cause, like I've done this before, I'm exhausted as it is, like I don't want to go home and think about this or that. And sometimes I guess I'm not the best salesman because I have a hard time convincing people. I can get so intense sometimes. I'm just like, we can do this if we have numbers, but it's really hard to like proactively like really inspire people to really come out and do it, and to come out in numbers, and to believe that we can do it, and to feel empowered and hopeful, because it does go against every single thing that we have ever been taught. Like I've talked about this with Antuan and our other like Black dancer group throughout the quarantine. It's still a pandemic, so I can't say throughout the pandemic as if that was the past tense, but like I didn't go to like a competition studio. Like I had pretty chill dance teachers, leaders, whatever, but there's still this like training that we're going to be broke. Like literally I'm taught that like I will put more not only of like myself, but of my wallet into being a dancer than I will ever get back from dancing. Like, whether it's me taking class or knowing that because I'm dancing, I'm probably going to end up on somebody's acupuncture table or bodywork table more than they could ever pay me. And I'm, I mean, I plan ahead. I'm a saver. I was blessed to not graduate with debt. So I just like budgeted for that. But I'm like, it's so fucked up that like I'm out here crunching numbers because I know I fucking sprained my ankle 8 times in my life and shit, playing soccer, just being wild and not really like, I wasn't only dancing, I was playing sports and just being a wild ass kid. So I'm like, damn, I'm about to be on somebody's table spending $100 at least when you pay me, you know, at some points, especially early post grad, like you're giving me $12 an hour. Sometimes I'm just like, we're just going to the bar after, like one time post grad, like we would just go to the bar after with the choreographer because she couldn't afford to pay us. And we would just have like a beer. But I was like, what are we doing? Like, it didn't last long and she paid us very shortly after. But just some of these situations, I'm like, all of us could really come together and advocate for so much more. And especially at that stage, like educate each other, all of us, like as a group, and do research. Because the resources, I mean, especially back then, it was a little more sketchy. Like, no one had good websites and nobody was really on the internet with smartphones and shit trying to figure out where to get funding. So I do also wonder about accessibility. I think people would be a lot more empowered if they felt like things were more accessible and less in this like grant bubble.
I think this is a good segue to talk about what that solidarity would or could look like in the sacrifices that it would take for that solidarity to happen, for these changes to really be implemented. Yeah, and like what would it take?
This is Nate. Jo Marie, the first thing that kind of I think about is I think it's two parts. I think it's obviously it's like education and awareness, right? Like we've heard that like Antuan has galvanized a bunch of people from this room, which is really great. But I think there's this other side of that is like we as well, I'll use the I as a Black person, as a Black man, I don't have the same home field advantage as like a white dancer, right? So like I already am coming in at like a deficit in so many different spaces, but specifically like my mental and emotional space, because there are, like we were all aware of during 2020, the civil unrest that happened. And I didn't feel like now I'm going to start advocating for dancers because people like me are getting shot in the street, tall, Black, 6'2", athletically, you know what I mean? Like, so I think it's this twofold piece that's like, well, it's like, yes, we need to galvanize. And I think it's like, hey, come check out this thing. But it's also like, I also acknowledging that like people have different emotional bandwidths, especially if they're Black or if they potentially identify as BIPOC. So I think in this time in 2021, so I think it's like it's this twofold. It's like, yes, like please come, we welcome you, we want your input, but we also have to provide a space for people to be like, I don't feel well, I don't want to talk about that one time that I got cut from the audition and there was all the white people left. Like that makes me feel like shit, because that's also representing of what my experience is in this present moment right now. So it's like, I think if there is like, that's what I feel sometimes. It's like, I want to feel safe to speak so that I can, because I'm reliving these experiences. I'm reliving these moments that make me feel less than, invisible, dehumanized, disrespected, disregarded, 3/5 of a human every time we have these conversations, for me. So it's like, like I'm getting sweat, like hot thinking about it. Like, you know, so it's like, but it's real. And like, that's my personal experience. So it's like, I want to be a part of these things, but I also know that like, it's triggering, right? Like I also know that like, it's fucking hard. I also know that like, it's not ending, right? You know, so it's like, how can we have a safe space to galvanize, but we're also not another group of Black people, you know, for the benefit of white America, right? Like how can we, so that's, for me, it's like, I think, Nate, well, what would you need, not necessarily want, but what would you need to be able to commit to a group that relives this very racial generational trauma? And I was like, for me, I was like, well, I need to feel held in a very real way. So I don't know, maybe Joy Marie, if that answers your question, that it's like,
I think you proposed an even more thoughtful question, which is, what would you need? And I'm going to relate it back. Correct me if I say it wrong. What will I need to commit to a group like DANC in order to collaborate on solidarity and transparency within the dance world, right? I think that's a good question for everyone to chime into.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'm going to kind of answer the original question a little bit, just because that's what I'm prepared on, which I'm sure will lead us into this moment. But I think regarding what it's going to take is there has to be a lot of selflessness. And I talk about this a lot, but there's a lot of privilege in being able to show up and work for free. So CoCo, you were talking about how if you turn down a gig, someone's going to follow and just do the gig for free. And I think we all have to recognize that whenever we work for free, there's privilege involved in that, right? And we've all probably done it at one point, or whenever we work for less than livable wage, there's privilege involved in that, right? You either have money coming from somewhere else, right? Maybe it's family, maybe it's bae, your spouse, right? Or you either have time or the ability, right? Which goes into accessibility, to do another job after 8 hours of work for less than minimum wage or livable wage. And I think we have to really like understand that the reason we continue to show up for this work is because we can, and there's a lot of people who can't. And I can't remember who brought it up, but thinking about like this moment of pandemic and quarantine and how many dancers are no longer dancers anymore after this moment. The reason I get to still do it is because of privilege, right? It's because I worked a job to now I can make enough off of unemployment and do that. There's so many dancers, and I hate that we kind of talk about it as like the people that show up are the ones that are gonna make it, because we have to recognize that not everybody can show up, right? Having a key to open that door, everyone doesn't have the privilege to do that. So to answer the question, I think what has to happen within our field is there has to be incredible, like solidarity in selflessness, right? So I'm going to say no, you have to say no, we all have to say no, right? For this whole thing to work. Even if that means like we have to be willing, if we want to gain it all, right? If we want to gain this career that supports us financially, emotionally, spiritually, we have to be willing to lose it all. And we have to collectively be willing to do that, to go into the space and say, okay, if she's not eating, I won't eat. If he's not eating, I won't eat. But right now, what happens is we literally go into a space where we know somebody wasn't eating, right? We go into these spaces knowing that we're taking somebody's job, right? We go in and still do the job for less than we're supposed to get. So there has to be this understanding that we have connected liberation, because we live in a capitalistic society. Even this dance thing that gets very like, you know, all of that, we still operate in this capitalistic society. And I think the quicker we can like acknowledge that and hold ourselves accountable to that, we can actually have some like ammunition to make some real change. But right now, we can't do it separately. We can't do it separately. And that's what's happening. It does, congratulations if you turn down a job because it doesn't pay enough. But like you just said, CoCo, if the person's going to follow you, like it does nothing. We've seen what people who come together can do, whether you have good ideas or bad ideas. We saw January 6th, people came together and had a bad idea and were successful, right? So what if we have a good idea and can come together? What change can we make in that way? But it has to be like, we have to really analyze that, the true meaning of solidarity, because a lot of it is solo, and we have to really get to solidarity. And that might mean you might lose something for someone else to gain something, but a lot of us aren't ready to do that. And I think until we all, or most of us, get ready to do that, we won't see any real change.
I also think, like with what you said, Antoine, it's not only like, or it is also just like about the job, but it's also in those moments when you either can or feel like you should take a free job or a job that pays very poorly. Like, it also perpetuates the cycle in the dance industry, and that it's okay. Yeah. Just like, and I know it's like what you said, Anton, like everyone's afraid of like the punitive action that we've all experienced, right? Like, you ask for more, you just don't get an email back, or it's very clear that you're getting blacklisted or whatever. So nobody wants to be that person to be like, hey guys, I'm going to turn down this job because the pay is shit. And I'm also going to post on this platform that the pay is shit. And I'm going to ask everyone to share this and to know that they're not treating people right, and to ask you to stand in solidarity with me. Like, that's hard. That takes bravery and just guts, and it's scary. But I do think with social media now, it's also like clear if you're being blacklisted after that, and then you can call that out. But it's just like a lot of work emotionally, and like Nathaniel said, like a lot of us are already just like exhausted, and I do think it takes that safety and that cushion and that community to and even like mentorship can help maybe. But I do think social media can really be used to call folks out for good, like to better the situation, and also to see folks' response, like with that Northwest situation, like their response was shit, and then that person posted their response, and it just like kind of kept going until people got their refunds. Or I don't really remember clearly, I'm not recounting it well, but I think like social media, having that community is super important, and also just reminding folks of what we deserve, because sometimes when jobs are free or the pay is bad, it's like, yeah, I would love to not take it, but the exposure, like some people really believe in exposure, but to me also my argument is like, if the exposure for this job is that good, then they actually have the budget to pay you better. Duh. So, you know, information, social media, cushion, community, bravery, solidarity, all those things will help.
I'm thinking about this is Nate. I'm thinking about, you know, what Kat just said about like social media, and you know, Antoine's bringing up this point about solidarity. You know, if somebody, you know, you get treated poorly from an employer, you know, can DANC be a vehicle to amplify these voices? Is there a library or bulletin board or constant posts that's like, this happened with this person, you know? So it's so that more people know. Because let's say, you know, I'm gonna just use Kat for instance, like something happens with her. I don't know if her is your pronoun because I'm not sure, but let's say something happens with okay, great, with Kat. And she posts it on her feed, but I don't have any connection to her. But if she sent it to DANC and DANC posted it, then I can see it. Then there's like, oh, that happened with there. I didn't know that, right? Like, and some people may have higher, you know, platforms, Instagram followers or whatever, and there's more reach. But is there a way that DANC can facilitate or amplify these very, you know, these experiences where dancers are being treated poorly, right? Like, can it be a constant thing, right? Like, we get the newsletter and there's like 800 bullet points in the newsletter, but on the bottom, can it be like, well, such and such happened? Yeah. I was like, woo, someone wrote a lot in this email. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, Control F and find what I need.
I'm trying to fix that.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Joy Marie, I appreciate it. It's a lot. It's a lot. But like, can that also be a thing, right? Like, holding the dance world accountable, right? Like, January 6th, you know, Tyler Peck wrote this thing on her Instagram about her 2 things that she was a part of. And I sent a full on message on her wall and was like, this is inappropriate. And this is exploitation of your white privilege. And homie took it down, DM'd me, and like, we had a conversation. But like, not that I'm not canceling her, right? I'm not canceling that, like, everyone like boycott this, but like to showcase that like this, she's a principal dancer for New York City Ballet. And, you know, that's offensive to a lot of Black people of saying something like that. But can Dank be a vessel to, I mean, that's a very specific experience. We're talking more like, you know, work-related situations, low pay, all these things. Can Dank also be that? Can Dank hold that space? Is there like, you know, an anonymous thing where people can put in their information, right? There was a big thing that happened with Give Me over the summer where, like, you know, it's like, I don't know, is that a possibility? Is that something that Dank can actually do?
This is Nick speaking. It sounds like there's a desire for Dank to be basically a megaphone to announce, like, hey, this thing happened, dance world. Now you know, and if you don't know, now you do. Yeah, I think that's totally possible. That it's for the platform that it is, and the platform that it can only become because it's only getting bigger. That it be the megaphone, the gramophone, the amplifier, like you were saying, to let people know, hey, this is what's happening in our world, because it's so easy to lose sight of that, or to not know about that. There are a lot of dancer friends of mine who aren't on Facebook or social media at all. So like, what do they do? Um, uh, I kind of want to back up to this this idea around both what Kat and Antoine were highlighting about newbies and young dancers and privilege and saying yes to like really shitty gigs or things that don't really serve us. I think it does point back to this idea of education, because I think about the young dancers, the ones who are fresh out of college, who were big fishes in their small ponds, and they were the star dancer, and they have this dream or this belief or hope that they can graduate and then move to whatever market or city, and then make it big, or pursue a career there, even if they move there to New York City or Washington D.C., Boston, San Francisco, even with a financial cushion. Like, sure, that's an element of privilege, but I understand where some of that inclination to say yes to an opportunity that isn't ideal, where that comes from is that if you're 22 and you move to a new place where you're a nobody, and your desire is to make a career out of this thing that you now have a degree in, and that's it, and you want that to be your life, that's your passion, that's what you love to do, and you audition your ass off, and nobody takes you except for one that is it's kind of okay. You've never heard of the choreographer, but they have a show already lined up. They have the dates, they have the venue, the work is there, and they're saying yes to you. Well, dancing for this person is better than no dancing. That's like, to me, that is where that the accepting of things that that aren't really acceptable. That's where that comes from. That's to me, that's the desperation, is this belief that, like, well, if I don't say yes to the, sometimes it's not enough to say no to something unless you can say yes to something else. So if there's this opportunity in front of you that you say no to, what are you going to do instead? Especially if you sought to get out here and make a thing out of this. And here's an opportunity to do exactly that. It might not be what you wanted it to be. It might not be your ideal or what you thought you were going to land into when you moved to this city a week ago. but that is still better than not doing that at all. And now what? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So the education around that scarcity mindset. I don't know what to say to that person instead, but it starts there. If they say yes to this arrangement of a gig that is poor pay, poor working conditions, all the things that we're trying to get away from, then it informs the people who are setting that up that, okay, it works for somebody. It works for this whole cast of 5 or 8 or however big that is, and then it continues. So it really starts there with those newbies who don't have a career behind them, who don't have the credits, and I've been on this stage and this, I worked with it. All of us can look behind us and say, like, I'm not going to do that anymore. We've done it. We've worked for X, Y, and Z. We've been X, Y, and Z. We've toured over here. We have enough of a career behind us where we can tell ourselves, we can tell other people, like, no, these are my standards. I'm not doing that shit anymore. This is where I am and only higher. But someone who doesn't have that reference, who only has college or high school, I don't know. Sometimes it's like that. And they don't have that reference for what a standard should be out in the real world because they're just entering into it. How do we intercept things right there? I think that's the low-hanging fruit, as one of them, as far as how to make things different.
I'd just like to piggyback off of that. That was like such a strong statement, like a lot of great points in there. But like also saying like these young dancers that will reach for the low hanging fruit, in some of these companies, there are people that have been there for years. And I think that they have just accepted that in order for them to have a career, this is the kind of treatment that they have to endure. I have like a lot of questions about how we even start to deal with that other half of it, which is like a whole other issue in and of itself. And I guess like that's why I'm so stumped when Joy Marie asked us this question, like, what do we do? Kind of like what are the steps? And honestly, I don't know, because I believe in my heart of hearts that there is a sense of accountability that's going to need to take place from the top. We're starting to see it slowly. I'm someone who writes grants. Something that I have loved seeing this grant cycle is that they are calling for artists of color. That's what they want to see, and that these organizations are supporting artists of color. I guess like my concern is like how performative are these actions just for them to get the dollars? But that's really not an answer that I'm going to have for at least another year or so when all of this dust settles. So yeah, like in a lot of ways, I'm really stumped about what we need to do, what needs to take place to kind of transition us out of this period where we've just been able to, or been willing to settle for crumbs, pretty much. Yeah, like I just don't have the answer, and I wish I did.
I wonder if like Dank can start, like we talked about Dank doing outreach or the outreach circle or whatever in education, because in terms of the youth, like younger folks can be impressionable. I think people coming out of college are also really looking for community. It's kind of easy to get folks to like sign up for things when you're getting out of college or you're not too involved with other things. And even high school or just like dance programs in that sense, because I think with dance programs, they're concerned around training. They're not, and then they just say like a word, a phrase, and then say like the real world after it, and no one's really talking about what that is. Maybe if the program has a touring company or somebody teaching a master class, and you'll have a little Q&A moment to talk about the real world, that's it. I didn't have a clue until like later in Booker T when I kind of half-assed started to pay attention, and honestly it was college. I only went to school for dance because I was like, shit, I don't know what else to do. I didn't want to go to conservatory. I kind of was a little more obsessed with academia, but I was like, I don't know what else to do. So did it, grateful. But like, even in the sense of it kind of being this scale or black and white of like the folks taking the gigs are privileged or desperate. I think they're also conditioned, I think we can say, because especially with the young folks, kind of like what you were saying, Nick, like the addition to that is if you've had like dance training, dance programs, you've actually only paid to dance. So it's actually also potentially, especially if you're not actually also, especially, I'm fucking crazy. How many words? I think when you're coming out of this space where you're either paying to take class at a dance studio, paying a university to teach you dance, paying to go to a summer intensive, or applying to scholarship and getting that, but like we have paid to learn how to dance, and therefore you've been in a lot more situations where you're paying to dance. So when you get out of school, if you do audition in any kind of way, I know it's different now, whatever, if you get a gig in any kind of way, it's actually for some folks probably genuinely exciting to just be able to dance for free. Like you're not even thinking about getting paid. It's just nice to not give somebody $20 to have to walk into the room. So I do think there needs to be that aspect of education where like the real world is that this can become something that supports you, job, career, whatever the language is. Like when you're stepping out of here, it's not just about the training and paying to be in the room anymore. Like it's fucked up as it is that's all there has been, but that's all there has been. So the mentality isn't going to be, I've been paying my whole existence and like entry into the dance world, or I've been getting it on behalf of someone who has sponsored me or given me this scholarship to now I deserve $20+ an hour to enter the room in the first place. Like that's a switch that's not just going to happen. And I think engaging with younger folks could be great to get those conversations started, number one, and number two, just to garner the not numbers, but just to get more people in the room for Dank, which I then think could help highlight Dank. And I think young people, in my perspective, younger folks definitely use social media sometimes in a more like brave and open way. And they just have a different audience, and that's important. So sometimes I do wonder about that. Like I'm going to be an adjunct professor at University of Hartford starting Wednesday for the spring semester. So I'm just like excited to like say some things, just to like drop little bombs. I mean, I'm teaching improv, so it's not like lecture-y stuff, but I'm gonna do it anyways. And I always like mention Dank when I can, when I'm finding myself around younger folks. But there has to be like some other information aside from this fantasy that we're fed at best. Antoine, you wake up, you get your coffee, you go to the studio, you dance for this company that somehow has a beautiful production budget, and you sell out the theater, and you get flowers thrown at you, and you take an Uber home. You're not even gonna get on the public transit, honey. Like you're just gonna get in that car, and you're gonna go to the gala, and you're gonna just go home, and you're gonna enjoy your weekend. It's gonna be a long day, like off, blah, blah, blah. So, there's gonna be a PT in the other studio waiting for you when you roll over your ankle in rehearsal. Like it's not a movie, So I just think there's like so much information that would have been lovely to know prior, because I think along with scarcity mentality, what? Scarcity? Put me up, somebody. Both of them? Second one. I forgot which one was the second one, but cool. I'm not going to say the word again. There's also like that hustle mentality. And for me, I I had in my mind, I was like, I'm going to pay my dues. Like, I'm going to say yes to everything. I gave myself a limit, at least. I was like, I'm not going to dance for free beyond 1 year. I'm going to say yes to everything. I'm going to do things I don't want to do so that I learn from them. And then after that, I'm going to never in my life take another free dance gig. And that was like radical. Like for me saying that I would only do it for 1 year, and people are like, oh, I would do it for 5. Like literally postgrad people, I can do that for 5 years. I'm like, you're coming 26. What do you mean? Because there's also a very low representation of your dance job being full time. So you're already expected, like we're already expecting that we're going to have a part-time job doing something else. So just in our off time, we'll do this free dance gig type of thing. You're not even thinking about it for your livelihood. So there's just a ton of like, we just need like maybe like a financial literacy therapist. Like just to be like, this is what you're worth.
Yeah, I think on that, and I'll be quick because I see the chat, but I think in this conversation of education, it's really important for us to educate ourselves and each other on what our wants are and what our needs are, because I feel like we talk about our needs sometimes like our wants. And for me, needs are non-negotiable. So, you know, I think just education around that, because I think we enter it, like I haven't even started talking about like the resume and stuff, right? Or how fierce we are, like what we like think we deserve. I think I'm still on what we need, and I'm interested in how we can like advocate from that place, because to me there has to be a baseline of what we accept to enter space based off of our needs. And just wanted to like, you know, echo kind of what I was sharing earlier. We have to think about like, I just know so many people, and we probably know so many people from our hometowns, right? Who you grew up dancing with. I went to high school dancing, who could not, they don't have the option to move to New York and dance for free. That reality doesn't exist. And I know so many beautiful dancers who I thought I'd be dancing with, you know what I mean? Who went to high school. I was like, girl, that's just not an option. So I think sometimes we're still looking at it as if that's an option. And for some people, they don't even have that option. So it just feels really important that we kind of advocate from that point. And then also I was gonna say, we don't exercise our voice enough. And I found that for me with the negotiating recently, you don't even have to always negotiate, just ask questions. And I feel like we don't do that. Asking questions is bad, right? If we have to use the restroom, what do? We hold it. We don't say, hey, I have to use the restroom, because that's like being a bad dancer, right? So I think we have to exercise our throat chakra a little bit more and get used to like asking questions. Because even during a negotiating period, just asking a question, there's so much power in that, right? Can you clarify this? Can you tell me more about this? This already shows that I'm a dancer that asks questions. So that feels really important for me. And I know that it's hard, and I know that we're not used to it. And the solution may be far away, but I think we still have to keep it in perspective that, you know, even for us to like, I guess I'll say this, everything that we're saying about, or everything that's being said anywhere about what's so difficult about this is part of it. It's a tool, right? To keep us further away from it. So I'm excited to see how we can think out, like people are depending on us to say like, oh, this thing doesn't do that, right? So that we say, oh, we get further away from asking for what we want. So I still think that it is about leaning into that discomfort to speak up and use our voice, even when it's not comfortable for us to do.
Yeah, I've been listening to what everybody has been saying, and yeah, like I don't really know like what and what needs to happen in terms of like education. Like I know like what I would like to see. I don't know. I went to grad school, and when I graduated, I feel like I still didn't know mad stuff. So kind of like, you know, I learned things, of course, but nothing is gonna prepare you for real life experience, like real life experience. So I think that some of the questions or like some of the things that were being discussed, especially like a lot of people is talking about like the privilege. Like I'm from New York, so I think about things differently. Like you know, like it's a privilege to dance for free, or I'm not sure. I feel like I'm saying that out of context. Someone, was that you, Anton, that said that? Something like, yeah, that was right. Like I never thought about that actually, never. But yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think about that. And then like I guess like a lot of people are not from New York, and then like New York is like a big, like, you know, it's like the arts epicenter type of thing. And again, because I'm from New York, I don't think I think about it like that. So, but when I was like, you know, like on tour and sleeping on people's couches in like California, I was like, I definitely knew I didn't want that shit either. You know, I was like, what? Like, that is not for me either, you know? So I really had to like, it was like trial and error trying to figure out what I wanted and what I was willing to, I guess, sacrifice for what I wanted to ultimately do. But education, dang, we just need to be literate about so many things, especially finances. I feel like that's a big thing, and the Black and brown community in general, like just finances. That goes beyond dance, you know, how to own a home, how to be a professional dancer and own a home, you know, things like that, you know. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. How to not rely on teaching to make ends meet. How about if you just want to dance, right? But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out too. So yeah, but this has been great conversation.
So I'm 23. So I've, you know, when I joined DANC, I came into it sort of from the perspective of what, like, Nick, you were kind of speaking on. Because I still consider myself to be young, to be a young dancer. And, you know, it would have been, like, I think about what I would have needed, right? And it's individuals like you all, who, you know, shaking, burning, angry, you know, carrying that with them and still speaking, right? Because it's important to do that, and it's inspiring for me because, you know, I think that if I can't say it clearly or directly or have it make sense, then I shouldn't say it at all. Or if I don't know, then I shouldn't speak at all. And I'm very much shattering that for myself, and giving myself permission to listen to when something's not going the way that it should go. But it's no one taught me that. Nobody told me that. In fact, it was the exact opposite. It was literally the opposite. It was take it anyway, suck it up. You're going to be replaced, you know, all of that. So yeah, I mean, I think like transparency is huge. And I'm reminded of that in conversations like these. I learn every time I gather with folks like you all, you know, I'm just reminded the power of just speaking from your experience and being honest about it. Because otherwise people actually don't know, and they won't know. They're just going to keep thinking that they need to accept the way that things have been, and thinking that somebody else is going to fix it. And I think that that's what we're feeling, is that that's not going to happen unless there's a genuine push from those who've experienced less than what they're owed. So all that being said, I wanted to thank you all deeply for sharing space with us. And yeah, if anybody has anything to say, feel free, and then we'll cut out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll chime in. I guess just like, the thing that I'll say is just let's all keep talking because, I've been in experiences where, I've had good friends that I've confided in that have just told me, that are also in the field, like, hey, I know that this feels like you have to do this, but just know that you have options. There are things that you can do to help yourself. And they're empowering, and honestly I think that's the best thing that we can do for each other, is just empower one another to keep pushing and making strides.
Michaela, you said you're 23? Wow. Whew. Thank you for saying that, because for transparency, I'm 37. And in May of this year, it'll be 10 years in the San Francisco Bay Area. People can still tell I'm not from here. I lived in New York City. I'm from the DC area, went to school in Massachusetts. East Coast vibe, I'll come at you. I'll say it like it is. Say what you mean what you say. Life would be so much easier if everybody, I've had employers tell me, "Hey, can you not be so forward or so forceful, because you'll infect the minds of your younger peers. You're going to educate them to think for themselves. Don't do that." Being in therapy and having the therapist recognize that I have this kind of voice, he highlighted, like, it sounds like you are often in a position where you are cast as the confrontational one because you speak the truth. That when you say what needs to be said, when you say what needs to be heard, that if it goes against someone else's agenda, or if it's going to steer the agenda in a different direction, and you're not the person in power, then you're the confrontational one. You're going to cause problems. You're going to make waves. You're going to shift things differently than how other people are going to intend. I encourage you to embrace that as early as possible. Don't let age bring that upon you. I've watched people age, and as they get older, into their 50s and 60s, they reach a point where they don't give a shit anymore what other people think. Like, I'm too old for this. Like, fuck, I want people to like me. No, they're over it. They're over it. They're done. I could say that I'm getting to that point, but like, I've already kind of been there for a while. It's just getting stronger. So for someone in your position, when you are aware of the truth, speak that shit. And if it means that you lose a gig or that people don't like you, those are people you probably don't want to work with anyway. That's not a gig that you want. Because they know that if you are going to be able to think for yourself, they can't control you.
Yeah, for sure. And just to follow up with that, I think that, I put it in the chat, but that's all part of white supremacy culture, right? Some of us may have ancestors who spoke up, went against the grain. And that hasn't been easy for many years for us and for people who look like us in this country. But they had the courage to do it anyway. So I'm empowered and inspired by those people that came before us so that we can do this today, right? So that we can talk about whether or not we're going to show up or not. They fought for us to have that option. So I'm empowered in that, knowing that we're standing on shoulders, but also that folks are going to be standing on our shoulders. So whatever work we're doing, this is for them, and it makes space. And then I'd offer to folks, don't do it alone. Been there, done that. It's very dangerous work. Don't do it alone. Do it with your community. It's always much stronger with numbers. And also have your people's back, right? I've seen so much just have your people's back. Don't let your dancer friend do it alone, right? Because we already know what happens to that person. By you simply advocating for them could change the whole situation. So don't let your people do it alone. It's very dangerous territory.
Where I wanted to chime in was way somewhere else. I'm 24 and I hear you. I can segue that to this small, very quick story. Not even a story, just like reality. Me and Joy Marie would be in the city, and we would go to buy mangoes and like get falafel and stuff that was very cheap, in order to like survive. And then I realized that very quickly in that reality, we kind of it snapped for me that dancers kind of hang with who they can afford to hang with, I guess. If you can't afford the Chipotle, you can't hang with us. You can't go out to class, blah, 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 all this stuff. So, and then I get back to this idea like, oh, wait, that's also the girl that like can afford point shoes and that has the pretty feet and like, da, 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 da. And I realized that dance is a very elitist thing, right? We forget, and like we often need to be reminded that, sometimes you're alone in these spaces because, like, what if everybody in the Cunningham class is going to Chipotle and I just have $6? So I'm going to, like, wait for Joy to get out of class and go meet her and da 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 blah, 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 blah. But it's like, now I'm isolated from the group and, like, they da da da. It's just like, I mute.
Yes, me and Semi we were in the Dollar Tree and yeah, for sure not having the financials to go into the city every weekend to go to the shows. But I always tell Semi, I was like, I think in a roundabout way, maybe unfortunately, fortunately, it allowed us to really push. And I always say, I think that Black dancers, in my opinion, from what I've just observations, I've noticed that a lot of the Black people that I grew up with dancing, we kill it. And I think it's because we're used to, because we have to. We don't have an option. This dancing isn't, we're Black people who decided to make a career out of dance. That's huge. Like, that's huge. That doesn't, we probably have people left and right telling us, what? Like, it's literally, it is honestly radical for us to make a decision. Like, we're going to be artists. And I'm going to make that a viable career in a world that's telling us like, that's not going to work. And we're like, no, I have to. So I almost want to, like, as a way to wrap this up, kind of just to speak to the fact that we're here and even talking about this just goes to show how amazing we are and how much we've obviously gone through. We didn't even get to talk about like discrimination or ways that we've been hurt racially. I don't think we need to even get into it. I think it's already there. We innately know it's there. So maybe as a way to wrap up, we can, in one sentence each, say maybe how DANC can support us, Black people, as members of the organization after we've had such a turbulent year confronting white supremacy in the face head on. How can DANC support us? Maybe very briefly, and then we can call it a night.
I'll go first. I have 2 words that come to mind, and that's just listen and learn. Like, that's it. That's all I need you to do. Just listen to me, hear what I have to say, and just learn from it.
I agree. I also think DANC can continue to support us by just continuing the pandemic didn't end in 2020, nor did racism. And I think while they did work to confront racism, it didn't wash away with the new year.
I second that with Kat, acknowledging that we're all not on the same playing field. Like, acknowledge, listen, take action.
Breaking the illusion that we're alone, semicolon, community.
I think it can be what Nathaniel was referring to earlier about being the megaphone. And not just about what Dank is doing or this meeting that they're having, but the issues that are prevalent, that need attention, and that has an audience that is much bigger than this community right here. Announce that shit. All of it.
I think I'd offer ask Black dancers. Often we get the question, or we often come up against like representation or tokenism. And the thing in the middle that solves that is asking, right? What do you need? Not me sitting over here planning and plotting what you need to tell you what you need. Not me asking you, can you do this thing because I think that you should do this and this will be good for Black people during Black History Month, but asking what do Black folks actually need? And then being ready for that answer, and then being ready for the work that's gonna come with that. And the money, open your purse, it ain't gonna be free.
I would like to piggyback on that and just say open, direct lines of communication. Like, no one is going to get anywhere if it's just, fluff and all that stuff, Like, you have to be able to listen, receive, and then proceed. So just keep the lines open for communication.
Cool. Well, love to all of you. This is great. I feel good. We're gonna wrap and then hello, furry friend coming in to say bye.
Sign our solidarity statement at www.danceartistsnationalcollective.org and follow us on Instagram at Dance Artists National Collective and on Twitter at DANC National.